kick off. So I'm going to be doing quite a few modules, if you want to call it that, around one particular topic. And that topic is actually the reason why I do any work and everything. Sounds like a quite condensed version, right? I realized quite quickly that my purpose is more around just really creating peace. And the question was, well, how do you do that? And the world that we live in right now seems like it needs a lot more of that, right? And generally it's an internal journey, because how we feel individually is essentially how we're seeing the world around us. It's not the other way around. A lot of people think it's the world around us, and then therefore we are now being impacted. Now, if you think about it, just slow it down for a second and just think about that very carefully, because where does your emotion come from? It runs on a program that you have within yourself. So the moment you give power to something outside of yourself, you actually lose the ability to change that thing which is causing the issue in the first place. Okay. Hopefully you'll understand a little bit more as we go along. Moving on to the next slide. So that's really where my intention comes from. Every course that I do and that I offer and teach in the corporate space, in large groups of communities, individually, is always aiming at one thing: unification of us human beings on the planet. That's it. That simple. Whether it be offering it for free or paying for it, to me it's an energetic exchange. So often I ask people, if they're not paying for something, please reciprocate with something else. Pay it forwards. Do something positively to uplift those around you and share the good stuff. Cool. Right, moving on. So the first slide is just, who am I? So just giving this quickly. My background's in accounting and IT and innovation, and found quite quickly through the learnings of a lot of hardships, especially in the innovation side, putting money on the line and putting a lot of effort into these kinds of things. And innovation in the true sense is quite a hard thing to do, because you really got to get rid of a lot of data in terms of programs running really strongly within yourself. Because otherwise what you're not doing is opening yourself up to the opportunities of the flow of stuff around you all the time. And there's a lot of stuff flowing around you all the time. Remember, it's always in the eyes of the beholder. So if you are a blank canvas, guess what? You're going to be painting something phenomenal. Okay? So that's who I am: creative, business-minded person, and an open heart to help others. Cool. Moving on. So I always start presentations with saying that you are the hero of your own story, right? Exactly as I said, when an individual, a human being, takes control of their own emotions and understands that they have the potential to have a positive impact in the world around them by how they react to the world around them, it's a major step forwards. Now, if you've heard of Joseph Campbell, you'll know that a lot of the movies that people watch, like Star Wars, a lot of those movies out there are based on the simple flow of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which starts off, then goes out into the outer world, then comes back as master. Okay, and I'll run through those different phases now very briefly. What I really love about it is it's so simple. And it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, we're born, we build up experience, and hopefully we come back with a bit of a sharing of that experience, as I feel like I'd love to share, and I am sharing now. Cool. So, the hero's journey, summarized. I'm just going to move myself now. I'll just leave that right there. So, as I said earlier, this is the cycle of it. To simplify it, we start off with a call to adventure. So as I mentioned earlier, if you were Luke Skywalker, you started off with that call to adventure right in the beginning. Okay, then you have this revelation: oh crumbs, this is how it all works, or this is what my life's about, and this is what I should be doing, right? So there's like a death process there, and then a rebirth, and in a death process, and death has the ability to be in multiple forms. It could be financial death for somebody. They could be financially going through having lost everything and then starting from scratch. It could be a relationship death where you've come to the end of a relationship and you're having to start again. It could be an actual death of a relative. And that's how you have those realizations. And then the rebirth is the part where it gets really important. So I feel like in the world that we're living in right now, we're going through a lot of this death cycle in terms of shaking up the systems and not quite knowing where we're going to go and what's actually going on. And then from there will become this newer world of revelation of how we can move forwards together, unified, honoring each other and working closely together. So then once you return, master the two worlds, and I love this analogy of the butterfly because it's so simple yet so profound. We look at a worm and we think, oh, that thing's eating my plants, and you might want to squash it, and that's how we perceive a worm, forgetting that worm will go into pupa stage and then eventually turn into a beautiful butterfly. And you can see the difference in approach when you see a butterfly. It's so beautiful, look at the wings, look at the colors, yet we forget it was a worm. And for us human beings, that metaphor is very, very true. We also start off like that. We go through this whole stage of figuring out who we are, and then eventually we kind of think we know something, and then we emerge as the butterfly, this beautiful being that actually knows very little. It's like that blank canvas. What I've realized is the more I research, the less I know. Eventually it'll come to a state of nothingness, I suppose, and that's, I think, when people really have the epiphany and really are able to take traction in the world of innovation, is when they blank slate themselves. There's just this blank canvas, because there's something out there that then just communicates, and there's a lot of flow of information, because now you're an empty vessel. The energy and the information can flow. Cool. So I'm going to end off with the double slit experiment just in this module, which is, again, for me, very profound. It was like the penny drop there again. I've had many pennies dropping over the years. Hopefully sometimes into my pocket, but not on here. Anyway, bit of humor, so please accept it as we go along. I will share that video after this slide, but summarized for me was more how profoundly simple this quantum realm is, and how powerful it is if you are able to work within the quantum realm, which we all do all the time, but be more consciously aware of how we can work within that quantum realm. There was one piece of information which was, for me, it's like, wow, it was just incredible. And that was, and I don't think we really know exactly the number, but it was something like 14.5 trillion times a second, and 14.5 trillion times a second it builds up. So everything is a wave action, right? So there's a positive, a negative, and it's a sine wave. So there is this theory that says that the universe breaks down 14.5 trillion times a second and builds up 14.5 trillion times a second. And if you take the analogy of a movie, right, you have the frames 1, 2, 3, and each frame is just a picture. But when it's stitched together, those frames create movement and flow, right? Now that's how I see that analogy, is that we have 14.5 trillion times 2, so call it 29 trillion frames per second. And each single one of those frames is a potential. Now that's like, wow. Again, imagine if you just took one potential per second, right? That's 60 potentials a minute times 60 minutes. That's 360 potentials an hour times 24 hours times 7 days a week times 365 days a year times your lifetime. Now, how many people are fulfilling even one potential in a year and realizing it? That is what I want to leave you with before we kick off this very powerful double slit experiment video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next module after this one.
What they taught us in school isn't really the way it is, and that our senses are playing tricks on us. You just gotta wonder, what is this reality that we find ourselves in? Quantum physics says it's all just waves of information. Do I believe that? I hope so. Yikes! And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous Double Slit Experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now, there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
Yo.